This video is to show you two techniques. The first one is how to knit with beads. In my patterns, it will always or usually say bead one, B1, which means place one bead on this stitch. So here it is written out in the actual pattern, row 1, knit 2, star, bead 1, knit 3, and so on to the end. So B1, place a bead on that stitch. It consumes a stitch. If you don't like threading on your beads and knitting that way with beads, you prefer to use a crochet hook, that's fine. Just do it that way, and where I say B1, just do what you normally do. But I think there are advantages to doing it this way because the beads sit, as you can see from this sample, the beads sit really beautifully right on top of the work, and they're straight. So I've done a couple of bead placements on this row, which is row 1, and I'm now ready to place another bead. Where it says bead 1, I'm going to place a bead on this stitch. So I will bring the bead that I want to place up, slide it up the yarn and bring it round close to the work, and then bring the yarn with the bead on it round to the front as if I was going to purl. And then I will slip the next stitch, which is the stitch in question, from the left hand needle to the right hand needle, and I'm going to slip it purlwise. So slip that stitch and then take the yarn back as if to knit, which I am going to do, but making sure that you leave that bead sitting on top of that slip stitch at the front, and then do whatever your pattern then says, which will be knit at least 1. In this case it will be knit 3. So I will now knit 3 stitches, and that will get us to placing the last bead, where I need to bead 1 and then knit 2. So here's my last bead for this row. Again, I'm going to bring it close to the work, bring the yarn to the front as if to purl, bringing the bead with it. Slip the next stitch, which is the stitch we're interested in, from the left hand needle to the right hand needle and slip it purlwise. And then take the working yarn around to the back because you're going to knit, but leave that bead sitting on top of that stitch, and it will be trapped by the next manoeuvre, which will be knit 1, or in this case 2. And this leaves us with a line of beads that are sitting nicely on the front of the work. Sometimes they will be slightly visible from the back. Sometimes that's quite attractive. It doesn't really matter. They will overall be more visible from the front than the back, and the thicker the wool that you're using, the more they will stay in that place. So that's how you do the placing of a bead. And the next technique I want to show you is how to work the star stitch. So on this pattern you can see here it says, it's a wrong side row, purl 1 and then star SS purl 1, which means star stitch purl 1, and you're going to do that on every other stitch right to the end of the row. And that gives you this, when you're using something like Kid Silk Haze, this really ethereal star-like pattern on the front of this close lace. So let's work that row. First of all, purl 1, and then work a star stitch. To do this, you need to start by purling 3 stitches together. It's not difficult, but it's quite a good idea just to loosen those 3 stitches off. So you're going to take the 3 stitches together and begin to purl them, but you're not going to complete the stitch. You're just going to pull that right hand needle back so that those 3 stitches that we're concerned with are still on the left hand needle. Now I'm going to take the yarn round the right hand needle again as if I was going to purl, and I'm going to go in and purl again, and then round that needle again, pull it back, and now I'll let those 3 stitches go. But I've replaced them with 3 stitches, so I'm not losing any stitches, I'm just grouping these together in a star-like shape. I'm going to do that again. So now I just have to purl 1 for the pattern, and then it's purl 3 together, and you can see actually behind here I've also got a bead that I placed on the previous row. Doesn't matter, so that's fine, just ignore it. Make sure it stays at the front if you can. So into those 3 stitches, purlwise, go round the needle to purl, but don't complete the stitch. Leave them just sitting there in a little bunch on the left hand needle. Then I'm going to go round the right hand needle again, back into the same 3 stitches and round the right hand needle for the last and third time, and then slip them off. And that gives me another group of 3 stitches. So do it again. Star stitch. So purl 3 together, but don't complete the stitch. Leave them sitting there. Go round the right hand needle, purlwise again, go back into those 3 stitches, but don't complete the stitch until you pull those 3 off. So each time you do it, you're taking 3 stitches away, but replacing it with 3 more. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. To the last stitch, which should be purl 1, which it is. So when you then look at the front of it, you haven't taken any stitches away. They look a bit distorted. The next thing you're going to do on the pattern will sort those out and bring them so that you can see on this rather bulky double knit wool, you can really see the star shapes much more clearly. But when you look at it with kid silk haze, you can see how ethereal they look when you get that pattern, especially when you add the beads.